Plus, because this is the first step in the legislation, I think that the insurance companies are going to be a little bit circumspect, because when it comes time for the rest of the provisions to kick in, there are going to be additional ways in which the government can exercise influence over their actions. And I don't think they're going to want to antagonize the existing governmental infrastructure, because they're not going to be able to realistically have enough people from the other party get into power between now and even 2016, right, in order to change it. So my bet is that this is not going to happen. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it all transpires. There are a few more people that are coming in, and I want to get some of their thoughts in. First of all, Lucky TN from Ustream says that it's step one. Now let's keep moving forward for Medicare Part E. E equals everyone. Well, everyone does not necessarily agree on this, and we want to hear from all of you. 866-677-2496. Dave, you're on the air. I understand you have a question or a point about the numbers.
Yes, hi, Derek.
Hey, Dave.
I
Where are you calling from?
For a large insurance company.
I'm sorry, Dave. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I actually work for a large insurance company, and we provide reinsurance for self-insured medical plans.
Yes.
And normally you'll see, on average, the employee costs, like per employee per month, averages, let's just say, $500. And, if the penalty for dropping the plan or not offering the plan to, say, a large group is only $2,000, why wouldn't an employer just drop the plan altogether and let the employees find it through the exchange on their own?
I think that this is a great question, and I think this is the kind of question that was raised with the previous caller, or not the one just before, but Dawn, who called earlier. And the point that I was making to Dawn is that I think the companies that are going to say, well, we will just not pay whatsoever, pay at all, are companies that we're likely not going to pay anyway, right? Because what happens now is, if you have companies that are providing insurance offered a tax incentive to continue to provide or to expand their coverage, I don't know that they've got an actual financial incentive to drop people. And the other thing that has not really been discussed in the conversation so far, but that I think is really critical, and that was kind of touched on when people were mentioning the tax on Cadillac plans. Part of how a lot of employers recruit and retain employees, is by providing access to health care. Right now, it seems like a situation where people forget about the power of the employee, because we're in such a strange employment market where so many people want a job. But what I believe is going to happen, Keith, is that you're going to find that there will be competitive pressures. Dave. There will be competitive pressures within the private sector to say, yo, I want to get the best people I possibly can in order to be able to compete against other folks. If I say I'm going to drop everyone from my insurance rolls, someone else will provide insurance, as they always have. If the reform works in the way it's designed to, which is to say that it actually starts to mitigate the overall cost of healthcare by pursuing they've got a number of pilot programs that are designed to try to replicate some of the reforms that have been tried in places like the Mayo Clinic and other folks, to see if we can actually reduce the cost of care itself. If the cost of health care itself begins to go down, you're going to have a hard time arguing to your employees that you want to kick them off the rolls. People who pay for insurance now will continue, companies that buy insurance for their employees now will continue to buy it, and the folks that didn't want to in the first place will continue to do what they want to do until there comes a point where the market pressures start to force them to have to compete more with other folks. We're talking about health care. 866-677-2496, 866-677-2496. There are a lot of questions about this. There's a lot of confusion as well, so we want to try to move towards as much clarity and understanding as we can, and we want to hear from you. What do you think about the reforms? 866-677-2496. Charlotte, is this history in the making, or is this Armageddon? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think it's Armageddon, but I do believe that the insurance I don't believe that this is health care reform. I do think that this is more insurance reform.
Okay.
And I'm an insurance agent, and from my perspective, when you dump 32 million people into the system that we have today, with the intention of giving those 32 million people health care that they've never had, the people that have played by the rules and have paid for insurance and the companies that have provided an option for their employees are the ones that are going to suffer, because now we're diluting the healthcare system to the point where people like me, who've been in the workforce for 30 years, paid my insurance premium every single year.
Yeah.
And I know that they're saying this won't happen, but I have to say I'm a little suspicious of anything. And I love our country and I love our government, but I'm very suspicious of anything that sounds too good to be true, because I've lived a long time and I've never had anything in my life that sounded too good to be true that was true.
But Charlotte, Charlotte, I think that's a great point, and I feel you. I'm also a person who doesn't believe in things that are too good to be true. I think you and I are right on the same page there. Part of my question, though, is, so you're saying that, well, putting all these new people into the insurance pool dilutes the pool. And what about those who have been in the system paying for a long time and have not had their how is this going to affect their insurance premiums? Well, the question I would actually throw back at you, Charlotte, is what about those people who've been in the system, and you're an insurance agent, so you know this happens, who've been in the system, who've been paying all along, they've been contributing, their employer's been contributing, and then all of a sudden they get sick, and their insurer decides, well, you're too sick, we're going to drop you off the rolls. What about those people? Should we just let them swing in the air?
That's a huge misunderstanding, and I have listened to 100 radio shows over the last 3 weeks, and I keep hearing that, and that does not happen. You cannot, in any state in this United States, cancel somebody's insurance because they got sick and used their insurance. Now, do insurance companies
Charlotte, are insurance companies able to provide a cap on how much they will spend on your health care?
Yes.
Yes, so let's be clear then, because you've raised a great point. I think a lot of times when people say that their insurance was canceled, I don't think they mean that the insurance company said, and actually, let me not speak for all of them, and maybe some of them mean that the insurance company was like, oh, you can just move to Canada. We don't want to hear from you again. But I think that the majority of people are talking about the practical implications of saying, I pay for insurance so that you will cover my care. Once I'm sick past a certain point and you cease to cover my care, it's almost like I don't have insurance anymore. What's the point of my premiums?
Okay, Derek, let me just say this.
Go ahead.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I really like the idea that there's going to be no cap, but that's not what's being said, and that's not the idea that's being thrown out there and repeated repeatedly.
Gotcha.
What people need to know is that, and I'm telling you, this is a total misconception. I hear it every day. Is somebody going to cancel my insurance? No, they can't. The only way an insurance company can cancel your coverage, not for you to outlive your benefits, but for you to be canceled is for your whole entire insurance company to leave the state that they're doing business in. I don't think people get that. I think people on television and on the radio are saying I was canceled by my insurance carrier, and that's a misrepresentation. It's not true.
So, Charlotte, I actually really appreciate you calling and providing that piece of clarity so that people understand that the insurance companies cannot just drop you. But what does happen time and again is not only the cap, which you and I both agree should be gone, the cap on what they will expend if you get sick, because you can't necessarily help how sick you got. But the other thing that winds up happening, and this affects a lot of small business owners, is they'll find somebody in their business of 20 people who gets cancer, right? And the insurance company will raise the premiums for the entire company because their risk pool has shifted towards a riskier position. And when they do that, a lot of these companies will say, hey, I can't afford a 50 or 100% increase in my premiums. Therefore, we gotta stop providing insurance. And that is what people translate as in my insurance got cut, even if that's not what actually happened. In practice, that's what it seems like, because all of a sudden they don't have care anymore. And whether it was because the insurance company said move to Canada or the insurance company said, we're going to jack up your rates by double, it winds up having the same price. But thank you for providing that perspective. We got time for one more call before we roll to break. Let's take Aaron. What's on your mind?
Hi, Derek. I'm self-employed, so I cannot afford my own health insurance. My husband is a union man, and his union has negotiated good health benefits. I'm happy that this bill passed, but I am concerned that we're going to start getting taxed on our health care as if it's income. Can you help me figure that one out?
That's a great question. So, Aaron, if your husband is a union man and he's got really great health care, here's the thing that you guys would want to consider. Right now, nothing is going to happen to your care. It's going to continue as it is. However, in 2018, 8 years from now, there's going to start to be an excise tax on high-cost insurance plans, right? And the reason behind that tax is basically what the companies are doing is they're providing healthcare services that are tax-free. But everyone in the country is winding up having to pay some element of tax for all that we do, and the private sector has oftentimes negotiated with unions to say, okay, well, we're not going to pay you X amount, but we'll pay you on balance something in healthcare costs. Here's the challenge with that. On the one hand, for union folks, it's not good if we provide this excise tax, because then you say, well, we took this money in lieu of getting payment. You said you'd provide me this extra $2,000 in coverage instead of providing me extra $2,000 in cash. But here's the problem, Aaron, for everybody else. If they paid you the $2,000 in cash, you would have paid taxes on it. If they put that $2,000 into health care, it comes to you tax-free. So what this reform does is it says, no, we've got to be a little bit more equitable, because unfortunately everyone doesn't have the benefits of union protection, but we're going to take time before we get to that, and it's going to be 8 years before we phase that in. So, Aaron, your family's got some time to figure out and renegotiate, and your union to renegotiate with your employer to make sure that they start giving you more cash up front. But in 2018, you will start to see that excise tax. All right, you guys, we got to take a quick break. We've got some important things on the mind. We're going to come back with another section on healthcare. And when we get back, we're going to talk to Portia, who wants to take on Charlotte, the insurance agency. We're going to take her call next. This is the Derrick Ashong Experience. We'll be back. You got to give the people time. Give the people what they want.
listening to Oprah Radio.
Welcome back to the Derrick Ashong Experience. Streaming live online at oprahradio.com. Here's Derrick Ashong.
Hey, you guys. We are on the air talking healthcare. We want to know your thoughts on whether this is a good or a bad thing. Is this history in the making, or is it Armageddon? Now, we've had some really interesting thoughts and people raising some wonderful points thus far. We just had a call from basically, you guys know where I stand on it. I think that it's great. I think it's important. I don't believe that it's perfect, but I don't think legislation ever is. And I'm personally a one who's never been living in a world of perfection, but living in a world for always striving to get better and better and better. And I believe that this takes us further along the line to where we need to go. We just had a call from Charlotte, who is an insurance agent, and Charlotte just argued that insurance companies do not drop people, that they cannot, by law, drop people. And I told you that we're going to bring in a caller who wanted to challenge that. So we want to hear from you guys. 866-677-2496. Portia, you are on the air. Is Charlotte giving us the full scoop?
Hi, Derrick. I just wanted to say that the information that the young lady just shared is not factually accurate, and I think it's very misleading for folks to get on the radio who have some perspective on a given industry and make statements like that. Yeah. But this actually happened to a member of my family who, was into a small business owner. She bought insurance for herself, and essentially the insurance company did not technically drop her because of the illness that she had. What they did was they went back to the form that she completed and filled out and said, oh, by the way, you didn't tell us that at some point in your time you had X, Y, and Z kind of diagnosis, and as a result of that, that's why we're going to drop you from the insurance.
Exactly.
And I think it's disingenuous for her to get on the radio and then say, well, I'm an insurance provider, and that doesn't happen.
Portia,
it may not have been technically related to the issue at that time that she experienced, but because she didn't disclose that when she was 10, she had an operation on her ankle, we're going to drop her from coverage now.
Portia,
and to me, that's disingenuous.
This is a big deal, Portia, and I'm glad that you brought it up, because what you're talking about is the issue of pre-existing condition, right? And what happens to so many people is that basically if you have ever had any medical ailment whatsoever, the insurance company can have the out to say, as you just told us, that, well, you had this problem prior, and we didn't realize this. I guess when they were looking at her paperwork and they were taking her money all those years when she was paying her premiums, they didn't notice that she'd had the ankle surgery when she was a kid. But now that she really needed the insurance and they have to pay, they decide that they can't. And here's the thing. I don't think that maybe Charlotte was trying to be disingenuous. The vibe I got from her, she seemed like a nice lady. And the vibe I got from her is that she wants people to have an understanding of her industry. And part of what's happening is, this discussion is so difficult and it's so painful that we wind up sometimes demonizing each other, and everybody's so mad. And so Charlotte is trying to tell us that, no, the insurance company is not just out here to kick you off. The insurance company by law cannot kick you off because you got sick. They unless they're willing to leave the state. However, the point that I was making to her, and the point that Portia has just reinforced for us, is that if the insurance company says to you, we're not kicking you off because you're sick, but we're going to double your premiums and you can't pay, oh, well. Or, well, we didn't realize that you got sick once before, 20 years ago. We hadn't noticed previously, and, oh, we can't deal with that. That the end result is the same. They're kicking you off. And the fact is, people in that emotional state who maybe don't know the regulations may not be able to say, no, the insurance company by law cannot really drop you off of their roles unless they're willing to remove all business and practice from that state. Maybe the individual can't say that, but they know the effect of it. They know the effect, right? If you came and you slapped me upside the head because you thought I was ugly, but you said, well, I'm slapping you upside the head because you are walking on the wrong side of the road, I might not remember whether you said I was ugly or I was on the wrong side of the road or whatever, but I remember it hurt when you smacked me. And so many people are hurting right now because of the way the insurance companies have been operating. And basically, they're one of the few monopolies in the country, folks. One of the few industries that is allowed to operate as a monopoly. Insurance industry is like Amtrak. They do what they want to do. But Amtrak doesn't kick you off the train because they've decided that, you've been riding for too long or what have you. It's a tough issue, y'all. Now, we're going to flip the script a little bit because I think that part of the problem here is there is a generational difference in the way in which we look at these things. And I believe that the older generation has got a lot of beef that is from before that they're fighting out. We're going to talk about what's happening with the new generation, how these policies affect us, and how we can make our world what we want to be. When we come back, we're talking with the founder of Generation We.
The Derrick Ashong Experience. The conversation starts here and continues 24/7 on Facebook and Twitter. Search Oprah Radio to get in on the action. And now here's Derrick Ashong.
This is me, DNA, and you are listening to the Derrick Ashong Experience. This is a program that tries to seek truth of what is going on in society, what's happening in our world, and we provide almost like a next generation take on life, art, business, politics, society, pop culture, the whole nine. We talk here about everything from the Grammys to the government debt. And we do so because it's important stuff. Now, when we talk about a new generation, a lot of times people are like, well, I mean, what is this? Is this like a young people thing? I mean, am I invited to be a part of this conversation? Yes, everyone is invited to be a part of this conversation because we're talking about things that are important to our world and are important to moving us into the world we want to live in. When we talk about a new generation, we're talking about a new generation of thought, a new generation of action, a new way of being in this world that is about more than just me. It's about more than just what I can get out of things, but it's hopefully moving us towards a society that is more effective, more inclusive, and that is more reflective of the world we want to live in. Now, at the same time, if you guys go on to oprahradio.com and you look at all the photos of the people that are up there, you will notice that I am a little bit younger than the other hosts. And because of that, I absolutely do bring a different generation of thought according to my age and experience as well. And one of the things that I think is of crucial importance in this world today is that this younger generation starts to become more invested in taking leadership in society. We can't afford to wait around until we're 40 and 50 and 60 and then say, okay, well, I've lived my life and now I've got the credentials, I've got the degrees I need, I'm respected in society, and therefore now I'm going to make a contribution. No, the kind of issues that we have today are of such a magnitude that we need to begin to be involved now. I've heard a lot of people say, well, you know, young people are not really that politically astute. They're not really that invested. They just want to hang out and play video games. First of all, there's nothing wrong with playing video games. However, it's not like that's all that we've got on our minds. You know, and I know a lot of young folks who've been working really hard at trying to make things happen. And I thought, actually, it's not just what I thought. The whole world could see that in the 2008 election, this generation stood up in a way that was unprecedented and that was unexpected to many people except for us. We knew that we'd been growing in our political acuity, in our understanding of the issues, and in our interest in making a difference. And we finally had a candidate in President Obama, then Senator Obama, who was reaching out directly to us. And from now on, we want to make sure that all candidates are speaking directly to us about what they plan to do for the nation. This is a generation that is going to change the world, but it's one that's facing a lot of challenges. And so to get deeper into that issue, we wanted to invite somebody who could provide some perspective. And so on the air with me today, I've got Eric Greenberg. Now, Eric Greenberg is a very accomplished gentleman in a number of different ways. He is an entrepreneur. He's the founder and chairman of Beautiful Inc., which is a food company providing tasty, healthy, convenient, natural food that is yummy and good for you. He's also a philanthropist, but he's engaged in this project that I think is amazing called Generation We. And you can check them out at gen-we.com. Eric Greenberg is here, and we want to talk to him a little bit about what he means by Generation We. Who are the millennials, and what is this all about? Eric Greenberg, welcome to the Derrick Ashong Experience.
Good morning, Derek. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. Now, Eric, first I want to ask you, what generation are you a part of?
Well, I guess I'm right on the cusp of the baby boom and Gen X. I was born in 1964, so that makes me over 40.
Oh, don't worry. Over 40 is not a bad thing. We love people over 40. My parents are over 40, and they're very sweet. They're listening right now. So
I think younger, though, than I was when I was in my 20s.
Absolutely. Well, that's not a bad thing. Now, this is interesting because I think I am on the younger side. I don't think I'm a millennial. I'm 34, so I'm kind of the younger end of Generation X. I was born in 1975. Would that be about right?
Yeah, you're a Gen Xer.
There you go.
The millennial generation, as we define it, started in 1978 to 2000, and there's 95 million Americans that are documented born in those in that time frame.
Okay.
And so when you compare that to 78 million baby boomers, it's the largest generation in the United States.
Wow.
And when they reach voting age in 2018, they will be roughly 105 million people against 74 million baby boomers because of attrition.
Okay.
And what you'll have is the next generation that's running this country.
Now, this is a very, very interesting point, because people always talk about the baby boomers are this huge block and about the things that they've done and the influence they've had. And I was watching Tom Brokaw's piece a few weeks ago about the baby boomers, and frankly, I was kind of disturbed, right? Because, and this is not to start a generational beef or anything. All of you who know me know that I love and peace and all, but I also try to keep it real. And it seems to me that the generation that is currently in power, which is effectively the baby boomers, has not really, they have not been the best custodians of our planet, of our nation, of our resources, and they are handing down to my generation and the generation after us, the generation you're talking about, the millennials, a huge pile of debt, of poor environment, and the possibility of being the first generation. And I saw this in the video clip that you have on your website, the first generation to potentially live a lower quality of life than our parents. Am I exaggerating here, or is there something real there?
You're not exaggerating at all. That's why I wrote the book, Generation We. It was kind of a wake-up call for people to get some reality and to understand what's really going on. I mean, the lifespan of this generation is the first that's expected to be less than their parents, because 1 in 3 are expected to have diabetes and half are expected to get cancer. And a lot of that's from fake food that people eat, and improper health care, bad educations, rotting inner cities.
Yeah.
But, the big issue is not even the national debt. It's the $70 trillion of Medicare entitlement.
Yeah.
Now, that's a net present value. So let's play this out a little bit. The net worth of private assets in the United States is approximately $56 trillion, and we have $70 trillion in Medicare entitlements. Now, if health care continues increasing at a moderate rate, at its current rate it's increasing, Medicare will require 100% of government receipts approximately by 2060.
Wow.
So this is unsustainable. We're going to get into serious healthcare rationing and other things like that.
Well,
but,
so
when you start looking at all the factors of debt, of education, of health care, of global warming, of environmental degradation, the fact that we've exported our industrial base overseas, this is I believe the American dream is being given away and squandered.
Well, I'm right there with you, Eric, and I think that one of the things that blows my mind in the way the conversation is flowing right now is people, you can get elected in this country by just lying. Straight lying. We're more concerned about Tiger Woods lying to his wife than we are about our politicians lying to us on a regular basis. And I on this particular program, I try to provide an environment where people can call regardless of their political bent. But I also want to be very honest about some of the things that I see that are really problematic. We had the former U.S. Comptroller General David Walker on about a month ago. And David Walker is a Reagan appointee. He served under Reagan. He served under George Bush, Bush the first. He served under Clinton and under George W. Bush. And he was saying to us that under the previous Republican administration, you had the highest sort of jump in the federal deficit and government debt in history. And one of the things that troubles me so greatly is that I hear Republican lawmakers in particular right now talking about, well, we had to get the debt under control and we're going to cut your taxes. We're going to cut your taxes. And the thing that troubles me so much is these people will keep cutting taxes for the existing working generation, right? Which is disproportionately baby boomers. And these folks will pay less and less because they want to hold their money. They want to control their money. It's my money. And then when we all mature, and the generation, we kids, I mean, you're talking about the ones born in 2000, they're 10 years old today, right? So as these kids are growing up and they're entering the workforce, first of all, kids coming out of college right now can barely find a job. It's the worst job market for college students in our lifetime. And additionally, we're going to wind up being saddled with that debt because sooner or later someone's got to pay. And the thing that blows my mind is, how is it that people can in good conscience say, I don't want to pay taxes, but they're going to let their kids have to pay infinitely more because they don't want to address the cost of the entitlements that they have created for themselves? Is it that they're not thinking about the next generation, or is it that people don't understand what's happening?
I think, let me answer that in three parts. First of all, I think the fact that our media is primarily controlled by 5 companies means, and those companies are all federal licensees of radio spectrum and satellite rights and other things like that. You have a situation where a government that is less than, let's say, transparent in its honesty can exert enormous influence over the media. Secondly, with that, you have a media that distracts people. You talked about Tiger Woods. Well, we have 2 wars going on, deficits, and all types of things, and people care more about Britney Spears than they do about what's going on in these wars. And so I think what's ended up happening is we have distraction media going on that takes people off the real issues, and we have a celebrity-driven, star-studded society where people kind of escape reality. It's kind of like the old movies they have in World War II that were these wonderful romances and this and that to take people off the thought that the country was at risk. And what's really going on is that I think when you talk to a person, you sit down with them and talk to them about it, they deeply care, but they're more concerned about their day-to-day survival. So if you can't eat or get water on a day-to-day basis, you're not thinking about the future. You're thinking about tomorrow. And what ends up happening throughout human history, I mean, this has gone on for, generations and generations and empires. What ends up happening is when an empire collapses, it's a result of a lot of bad decisions made over a long period of time and people not really being custodians of the future. And unless the leadership of the country and the media are really transparent about that, it's not going to change. We have one really big factor that's going on, though, and this is, something that happened with the health care bill, with the public option, which I supported, and I was very disappointed we didn't get passed. That, the lobbyists and the insurance industry and other interested parties spent $500 million of lobbying for 435 legislators.
Wow. $500 million worth of lobbying? That's
$500 million. They just sent flocks of people onto Washington. And, in order for somebody to get elected, they need money. They have to have support. And so what ends up happening is you get good, decent, honest people that go into politics for the right reason, and they're rendered impotent. And I know a lot of people in politics, a lot of senators and Congress people, and they're under huge attack because they've taken hard stands.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like, we talked on this program a few months ago about the Supreme Court decision that basically removed the restrictions on corporate spending in the final stages of a campaign, which I think is a major problem because basically these companies can invest in flooding the airwaves with whatever they want to say with no fact-checking on it. This is big stuff, and everything that we're talking about in the show normally about healthcare, about the government debt, about popular culture, about the media is all relevant here. And I want to hear from you guys, folks that are calling. We want to know from you. We're talking about millennials are 95 million strong, almost 20 million more than baby boomers, right? Baby boomers, I want to know what you guys think about this issue. Millennials, we want to hear from you as well. And the first thing that I want to know about is, do you guys even perceive a divide in the interests of these generations? Are the baby boomers selling the millennials up the creek? Millennials, do you feel like the next generation has been a decent custodian of your lives? Baby boomers, do you believe that you've done the best you can? Is there a generational divide? Are we doing the right thing? We want to hear from you. 866-677-2496. I am saying right now that I believe that our parents' generation has not done right by the youth that are coming up. I want to hear directly from you. Am I right or am I wrong? Is this just an unnecessary beef, or is there something to be said here? 866-677-2496. Is there a generational divide whereby the older generation is living the good life on the backs of their children? 866-677-2496. All you youngins can holler at me on Twitter, twitter.com/Ashong, facebook.com/Derrick Ashong Experience, and we're live on ustream.tv/Derrick Ashong Experience. We're talking to Eric Greenberg, who is the founder of Generation We. Now, Eric, before I start the holy war between the generations, I want you to give us a little bit more perspective on what makes Generation We different. And what makes this generation special?
Sure. Let me start off with one statement, though. In our book, and what we are advocating is that the fair-minded, the legacy bearers, and all generations come together. And you've probably seen the movie The Matrix, where Lawrence Fishburne says to Keanu Reeves, "You can take the red pill or the blue pill." Well, we say don't take the red pill or the blue pill. Take the clear vision and get nonpartisan, and everybody unite for the best of all, because at the end of the day, in 30 years, if you're a boomer or a millennial and there is no health care, you're both in a bad situation. If the country's not free or there's no economic base, you're in a bad situation. Taxes are going to go up, and they're going to affect everybody.
Yes.
So my whole thing is everybody has to come together for the greater good.
Absolutely.
So as far as the perspective goes, we have found that this generation is more politically independent, more civically engaged, much more interested in the affairs of the world. They've grown up looking at the Earth from space. Like if you think of Google Earth, for instance, and see one planet versus artificial borders and boundaries. And in our country, when I was growing up, it was less multiracial as far as how you socialized and dated and other things like that.
Yeah.
And today, there's less and less of a race and religious divide amongst people. So I think we've really developed into a multicultural society, which is wonderful. Awesome. So I think what I find from this generation is that they are very motivated by doing right by the world and being more involved. And what the issue is they don't really understand how to do it. And the way the institutions of power are set up and business is they don't really get the seat at the table. And they did swing the election for Obama. I mean, we published a lot on this. It's on our website, www.gen-we.com. There's a lot of data. All our data is out there.
Yeah.
But so they did swing that election. But at the same time, people pay lip service to the youth. I think Obama really understood their importance.
I think Obama actually spoke to the youth in a way that not only could they understand, but through the media that we use. He basically got in there and utilized the tools of social media and of technology to effectively connect with people in a way that they felt natural for them. And I think that this is a big deal because on the one hand, I agree with you. We want to unite, and it's going to take all of us working together. But part of the problem I've seen is I'm wondering if people even perceive a problem, and I'm worried about the generation that came before us. And I really want folks to call in and let us know, do you believe that the generation that went before is really acting as good custodians of our world, of our planet, of our nation for the generation that's coming back? 866-677-2496. We're on the air with Eric Greenberg, and we're talking about the generations. 866-677-2496. Lisa, I understand you're a baby boomer. What do you think about the issue?
Hey, Derek. Hey, Eric. I believe I understand the concern of previous generations and their custodial value or what they've brought as custodians to our society. But what do you think about how the current generation is always feeling as if the previous generation never did enough?
Yeah.
we're always, I think, every generation feels that they are more knowledgeable. They have more information. They can. The previous generation just was not good enough. So what about that concept? I mean, society is always going to feel better or smarter than the previous generation.
Every generation blames the one before.
Well,
they do.
There's a historical difference here. If you think about what Brokaw called the greatest generation, after World War II, they established the Marshall Plan. They rebuilt Europe and Japan to become allies. They successfully developed the Manhattan Project, which kept this country free. They then instituted the GI Bill and educated all the soldiers. Then what ended up happening is the 50s and early 60s were a period of huge economic growth and American success across the world. Our educational system got better. The quality of life got better. That generation gave us a civil rights movement. Dr. King was a part of that generation. And so that generation was a great custodian. And so I don't necessarily think that all generations would say that prior generations left them worse off. I think what's going on now, it's a cumulative issue of what's happened to our environment, what's happened with the debt, what's happened with our health care, what's happened with just how the system is spun out of control and concentration of corporate power. Yeah. If you think about the corporate elite, they almost collapsed the financial system of the world last year, and we are paying trillions of dollars to still bail this out. And we have 10 million homes, for instance, in this country that are unoccupied right now. There are millions of people whose homes are underwater, all because of speculation and unregulated derivatives.
You know, it's interesting, Eric, because this is the thing that I keep thinking about, is that all of the issues that we are talking about in society and in the news media, all of these issues reflect there's a major generational component to them insofar as there are people who are typically making the decisions are people who are already established and who are older. And then the people who are going to have to deal with some of the consequences of those decisions, of the biggest decisions, things like the financial collapse, which is now making it impossible, not impossible, but unprecedented, let's say inordinately difficult for college graduates, recent graduates, to get a job, which, and by statistics, y'all, folks who have a hard time getting a job after college are more likely to suffer from unemployment and from diminished income over their lifespan. I mean, this is really big stuff. It seems like everything we're talking about in the news media has got a generational component. Eric, we're going to have to let you go, but before we do, I was wondering if you can tell our listener, you know, the person who's tuning in right now, what is the thing? Because we want to give folks a little bit of insight into what's possible as well as what's happening. What would you say is the single greatest possibility that is represented by Generation We, and where we may find something to look forward to?
Well, what I've been advocating and what many are advocating is trying to invent the next generation of non-carbon-based energy. People talk about clean technology, wind, solar, and that type of thing. I'm talking about taking it a step further, and whether it's fusion or it's hydrogen or other technologies that we don't know about, basically starting an Apollo-type project like we did to send a man to the moon and build our space program and invent the next generation of energy. What that does is it does a few things. It immediately creates an entire new economy that cuts out a lot of the cost of energy. It zeroes out carbon emission. But for me, most importantly, I mean, right now, 20% of the people in the world do not have an adequate supply of clean water. Yes. And you come from Africa really understand this. Yes. And it's expected to be 30 to 40% in another 20 years. If energy becomes if it can be generated in bulk at source, you can then start desalinating ocean water and replant all the deserts and create new carbon-absorbing forests and agriculture, and you can end starvation around the world, and it will ultimately change the world economy. It can put the U.S. in the lead.
So we're talking about basically how new energies and new technologies that are really looking at how we solve some of the environmental and social concerns of the planet, and really how we provide better and cleaner energy to people, this may wind up being the legacy of this next generation. Eric Greenberg, founder of Generation We want to thank you for giving us some insight into who the millennials are, what they're all about, and what may be going on with this generational divide. Folks, you can learn more about what he's doing at www.gen-we.com. Eric, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Derek. Have a great day.
You too, man. Yo, folks, this is really intriguing stuff. And I got to tell you, I thought that it was a very interesting point that Lisa brought up about doesn't every generation blame the previous generation? And I think that it's true. Every generation does, because people, first of all, everyone wants to pass the buck. There's a natural human tendency to just go ahead and say, well, it's not just me, it's so-and-so, and if they had done this, then it would have been that, and blah, 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 blah. We're all basically affected by that tendency to some degree. I do think, though, that it is worth considering and it is worth discussing in this age of radical technological advancement, in this age where we have more people on the planet than ever before and we are growing at faster rates than ever before, in this age when technology is bringing us so much wisdom and so much opportunity, right? In this age of accumulation of unprecedented levels of wealth, how can it be that our country is in unprecedented levels of debt? Something's got to be going on. Something's got to be going wrong. And I want to know if there is a generational issue at stake here. I want to know from you guys, do you believe that the baby boomer generation have been good custodians of our people, our planet, and our nation? And have they left something for the young generation to take up? I want to hear from people of the older generation. Do you feel like you've done your best? Are we just complaining? Is this something that could have been done better? From younger people, do you feel like you've been sold up the creek? Or do you feel like, it's not so bad, things could be better, but we got it under control? I want to hear from you. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the generations. Has the baby boomer generation left us out to dry? 866-677-2496. We'll be right back.
listening to Oprah Radio.
The Derrick Ashong Experience, a mashup of politics, pop culture, and what people are talking about. Here's Derrick Ashong.
Here's Derrick Ashong on the Derrick Ashong Experience, and we are talking about the generations. We are currently speaking about what is the divide potentially between the generations, and we are saying, has the previous generation done an adequate job in their custodianship of our world? Has the baby boomer generation basically done their job, or have they sold the next generation up the creek? Have they taken good care of the people, the planet, the environment? Have they given us enough to work with? We want to hear from you. 866-677-2496. 866-677-2496. Has the previous generation done their job well enough? Now, I'll tell you what, personally, I think that there's a lot that's lacking. And to be fair, you know, we all work for baby boomers, right? I'm on Oprah Radio. I work for Oprah. You know, the person who put me on largely was Gayle King. Gayle had me on her show. It was the first show I ever came on Oprah Radio, and we had a great conversation. It was all good. My parents are baby boomers. I'm not here to tell you that baby boomers are bad. I don't believe in generational warfare. I don't believe in some sort of primordial beef, nothing of the sort. However, I do believe that it is worthwhile to try to speak the truth and to really look at what's going on in our world. And I'm looking at the situations that face us, the way in which our climate has been treated, the way in which we have developed war as the weapon of choice in addressing the ills of the world. And the way in which, to this day, if some idiot jumps up on the television set and says he's going to cut your taxes, you're going to vote for him without considering the fact that given the entitlements that have already been created for Social Security, Medicare, etc., someone is going to have to pay for this stuff eventually. And it looks like you guys have left our generation out to hang. Is it just me? I don't know. We're talking about it. Has the baby boomer generation done their job in being good custodians of our people and our planet and our nation? 866-677-2496. Charlotte, you're on the air. First of all, Charlotte, what generation are you in?
I'm a baby boomer.
You're a baby boomer. What, can I ask what year you were born? We don't know your last name, so it's okay.
1952.
1952. Okay, Charlotte, what are your thoughts on the issue?
Well, first off, in answer to your question about whether we have been irresponsible to the future generations, I believe that we have been, but more through some people are very selfish, and they will continue to be that way. But I believe